Back when the Mark II Hornet was released last year, there was a notable omission from the lineup, the Super Hornet. The twin-seater variant, slightly longer, slightly bigger, and slightly better geared. Well, that wait is over, and now the F7C-M Super Hornet Mark II is flyable in-game, which naturally prompts the question, how does she fly? I'm Forrester, and this video will review the currently flyable F7C-M Super Hornet Mark II, which is described on the Star Citizen website as a medium fighter. If you've seen other ship reviews on this channel, you'll be right at home with this video, which follows the usual format. It's split into 5 sections, starting with a ship tour, assessing combat performance, reviewing handling and visibility, looking at the operating costs before finally summarizing. As always, I've included timestamps in the video description in case you want to skip ahead. And if you're one of the many people watching who isn't yet subscribed to the channel, you might consider it so you can be notified of future Star Citizen videos. This is the F7C-M Mark II Super Hornet. Visually, it looks very similar to the Mark I. It's kept a lot of those same features that we loved about the original. In the landed configuration, the wings still sweep back, and the profile of the ship is largely unchanged, despite having more weapons, or should I say larger weapons. To get aboard is via a ladder on the left or port side of the fighter. That's for both the pilot and the co-pilot. This is also where you access the ship inventory. We'll hop up the ladder to the co-pilot seat, which is the rear seat in the Super Hornet. As you can see, you get a usual rear seat view with the 2 MFD screens, a little joystick, and plenty to see. Hopping out of the co-pilot seat, the same menu is used to enter the pilot seat at the front of the ship. The cockpit has been decorated a little bit more nicely in this version. By way of armament, the F7C-M Mark II arrives as stock with a nose turret carrying 2 size 3 weapons, defaulting to Panther repeaters, a mount underslung beneath each wing for a total of 2 size 4 weapons, defaulting to Revenant Gatling guns, and a ball turret armed with 2 size 3 weapons, again Panther repeaters, as well as a selection of 8 size 1 missiles in the turret. The Mark II Super Hornet additionally carries 8 size 2 missiles on the regular missile mounts. All of that represents a significant upgunning from the original Super Hornet, and understandably the new model performs significantly better in combat. It is remarkably similar, however, to the loadout on the F7A Mark II, which is strong praise, I suppose. The Mark II Super Hornet comes equipped with 3 size 1 shield generators, which is also an improvement on the other models, signalling to the larger dual-seater frame. All of the weapons can be operated by a solo pilot, so none of that firepower is reliant on having somebody in the back seat. Where the rear seat is occupied, however, they are able to control the missiles and the ball turret, which can be an effective way of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. It's hard work, however, as inevitably with a dogfighting ship, the pilot is having to twist and turn, and that makes life more difficult for a gunner, such that it may be easier to slave the weapon forward. Still, the combat performance of the Mark II Super Hornet is great in the furball. It's a ship that can dish the damage, take a fair punishment, and it's rather fun to rip apart enemy fighters one after another. Much like the others in the Hornet series, the canopy on the Super Hornet has some struts, but generally gives a good view out to the front, above, and to the sides. The rear seat is a little more constrained, but given that in critical situations the gunner is likely to be in the remote turret, that's less of an issue. By way of handling, the Super Hornet flies fairly well for a medium fighter. It's slightly less manoeuvrable than the single-seat siblings, but not so much that it's noticeable. At SCM speeds of 215 meters per second, the F7C-M can turn in fairly short order, not drifting too much, and that's helped with a little boost. Outside of the SCM limiter, the Mark II Super Hornet can reach a top speed of 1,125 meters per second, which is plenty quick enough to be chasing down all manner of targets. The stock quantum drive is nothing special, somewhat slow, but the fuel stores are significant, and so it's a potential upgrade candidate for a faster drive without sacrificing too much range in pyro. The Super Hornet is fairly cheap to operate, with refuel and repair costs usually very low, with the notable exception being restocking the ballistic weapons and missiles, which can add up into the thousands or tens of thousands of Alpha UEC. That's not hugely problematic, however, as the Mark II Super Hornet is more than capable of earning those funds back through combat contracts, for which anything offering a fighter-sized target is fair game. By way of upgrades, personally I'd swap out the quantum drive for something quicker, like an Atlas, but I'd keep the rest as is. There could be a case made for switching the weapons to those of personal preference, including potentially the Heartseeker upgrade kit for extra DACA. The Mark II Super Hornet is hands down an improvement on the old one. The extra firepower and extra shield generator alone make it an on-paper upgrade, but the new performance brings this fighter much more in line with contemporary ships. The iconic profile is still there, including that very Hornet noise as it decelerates. And the consolidation of controls in the front seat means that when the rear seat goes empty, nothing is wasted. Part of the appeal of the original Super Hornet was in having a dual-seater fighter, which reminds me of real two-seater aircraft like the F-14 Tomcat. A player in the rear seat can make themselves useful, firing the guns, tweaking power settings for the ship, or even firing missiles whilst the pilot is aiming their guns for true mixed combat modes. It's probably not as powerful as having somebody in the rear seat as it would be having a wingman with another Hornet, but there's enough to do that it can be a fun experience, and for showing somebody the ropes, that can be helpful to ease the learning curve into combat. It's not all good news, however. Whilst the specifications have been modernised, the layout of the ship hasn't. There still isn't component access or weapons lockers around the ship, unlike some of the competition, and the inventory is still accessed via a radial menu on the ladder. That ladder is also shared by the pilot and co-pilot, meaning getting in and out is a serial rather than parallel affair. And the Mark II is an entirely different module to the Mark I Super Hornet, meaning existing pilots are forced to pay if they want to upgrade their pledge. Basically, the old Hornets become interesting collectibles, but subpar compared to the new ones, and that feels a bit of a rough deal for existing owners. As for the cost, the ticket price for a brand new F7C-M Super Hornet Mark II is $240. Whilst the launch price does temporarily come with the Heartseeker upgrade kit, that's still a very expensive price to pay for a fighter, albeit a good fighter that really just does one thing. As a newly released ship, there isn't yet an in-game price at time of recording, but the Mark I is at around 5 million Alpha UEC, so a price of 5 to 7 million credits for the Mark II might be a fair guess. I do like the Super Hornet, and the Mark II is an improvement to it. I like the dual-seater element, and think there's a place for it in the verse, but for my money, I'll probably wait for a few months' time and pick up the fighter in-game and enjoy it all the more for saving my wallet a little. But what do you think of the Mark II Super Hornet? Kick the tyres and light the fires, or needs a beer to put out those flames? I look forward to reading your thoughts in the video comments. If you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to help me understand what videos to make more of in future, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, you might like to do that too, so that YouTube knows to show you more videos like this in future. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.